I sort of want to move into recapping the 49ers versus Broncos preseason game. And this is a team that, the Raiders are going to see a couple times this year. And it's a team that you absolutely despise. But I guess I'll try to keep it a little brief and talk about, sort of the story of the game. And I've had a couple days to sort of digest it and how it went and everything. And, watching it live was just spectacular because there was a lot of stuff going on in this game. So I'm going to start from the beginning, and I'm going to sort of talk about who started the game. And Brock Purdy got his first, playing time since the NFC Championship game where he tore his UCL. And, I have had my questions about Brock Purdy, recently. And I really hope that the viewers, at home, I know a couple of you guys sort of think that I'm being very critical on Brock Purdy. And I just sort of want to clarify that I like Brock. I really do like Brock. I am just hesitant to say he is the bona fide starter for the next, 5 years, right? I think that he has only played 8 games. So I am just a little, I guess I'm cautiously optimistic about him, and I'm not going to say definitively that he's the guy, right? But that being said, Brock came in on Sunday. No, Saturday. Yeah, the game was Saturday, right? Game was Saturday. And Brock looked so confident and like he hadn't missed a step. And he was running the offense at a high level. They didn't end up getting a touchdown out of the drive, but the offense was humming. And I don't know what Brock does, but it's much like you can tell the difference between the offense with Brock on the field and with any of the other 49er quarterbacks, and a couple we're going to get to in a little bit. But the offense was super efficient, and I think Shanahan really did a great job of getting Brock plays that didn't necessarily ask a whole lot out of him. Brock was he was throwing screens and whatnot to Debo, and he got Brandon Ayuk on a slant wide open. They were playing, very soft coverage. They were giving Ayuk 10 yards of space, and Brock was just able to zip it right in there. And so Brock looked great. And if he plays, this is going to be probably my hot take of the day, but if Brock Purdy plays the way that he did last season, I don't think that there is a team, including the Kansas City Chiefs, that will beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl. Brock was when he was playing, commanding the number one offense in the NFL. And the 49ers, I think, have a better defense by far than the Chiefs. Although a lot is yet to be determined how it might change under Steve Wilkes. But Brock looked great on Sunday. I'm not going to downplay it at all. The game plan was amazing. And I think, especially once you get Kittle out there, I don't think Kittle played. I think it was Ross Dwelly in his place. But once you get Kittle out there, how are you going to defend that? You know what I mean? Brock is getting the ball out on time to the players that it needs to be getting out to. And he's still rolling out left. And I do have my questions on whether defenses are going to be able to take that away from him this upcoming season and force him right. But so long as he gives the same efficiency to the offense that he gave last year, I think the Niners will probably win it all, finally.
I think you're mostly right. That's assuming the defense is the same as well. Because, yeah, the main question for me this season, other than Brock Purdy and the entire quarterback room, really the biggest question has become the depth of this team. If injuries happen, for God's sakes, if you lose, which for any team, if you lose your starting left tackle, that's huge. But if you guys lose Trent Williams, I think that might be that would be the worst injury in football, other than certain quarterbacks in the league. He's one of the most valuable players to any team in football right now. Mm-hmm. I think if you lost a guy like Fred Warner if you lost a guy like Christian McCaffrey, I think your team would, yeah, I mean, knock on wood, but it would completely change your team's ability to win games. Because I really do question the depth right now. But my other question is, how will the defense fare this season? Will they be same old, or is Wilkes going to be changing a few things here and there? And again, lack of depth. I mean, do they come out and do they play with the top defense again, or are they a little different?
Well, this is what I'll say, like my observations out of the defense, and it's not necessarily like hot takes. It's like, if you watch the games, you can see the same thing that I'm seeing. But that being said, the defensive line is not what it was last year. And part of that probably has to do with the absence of Nick Bosa. A huge part of that probably has to do with the absence of Nick Bosa.
100%.
But the defensive tackles, Javon Hargrave played. I don't think Eric Armstead played. So
I think
Eric
he
Armstead
did a little bit.
Maybe. I don't remember.
Because they were showing the size difference. I was watching just the first drive, and I think they were comparing the size difference between, or maybe the build, whatever you want to call it, between Armstead and Hargrave. I didn't realize Hargrave's not that tall.
Hargrave is I mean, he's pretty quick. He's not necessarily like a run stuffing defensive tackle from what I've heard. I haven't watched extensive film on him, but from what I've heard, he's more of a pass rushing kind of D tackle, which is good for Nick Bosa so long as he comes back. I don't know what the hell is going on right there. What's the holdup? But he should be out on the field right now. Can you hear that
was very faint, but it's fine.
Okay. So we got to see Hargrave in this defense, and he made a good play. Sort of, Russell Wilson looked like he was going to break away and have one of his Russell Wilson runs, and Hargrave was able to tackle him maybe around a first down, but it could have been worse. I guess the defensive philosophy might be a little bit different because I feel like under D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh, they played a lot more base and didn't blitz as much. And it seems like Wilkes is kind of figuring out his personnel and everything. So we'll see how that goes along during the season. I think the bigger story right now is what's going on at kicker, because Jake Moody missed another field goal, and he is their third round pick kicker. And are they going to potentially lose a game or two here, riding with Jake Moody? Are they going to call Robbie Gould back and get him back? Are they going to, go after, they already have Zane Gonzalez, but are they going to go after another kicker and see what they've got? I don't know. It's definitely a good question. Maybe they can get something out of Jake Moody, although his stock has been plummeting. If they wanted to trade Jake Moody to another team who's like, oh, maybe we liked him in the draft and they're not a win now team and could possibly have a kicker for the future.
I don't see any team trading. Well, it's funny I say this.
No, I don't think any team kicker swap. You know what I mean? The Niners need a guy this year because they have to win a Super Bowl now. And maybe a team like the Carolina Panthers, I don't know who their kicker is, but I'm just using them as an example. They're not looking to win the Super Bowl now, right? So maybe they can say, we liked Jake Moody coming out of the draft, and possibly, they maybe felt like the third round was rich for a kicker, like a lot of people do besides the Patriots and the 49ers. But it's just timelines. Can Jake Moody be a better fit for another team? And can another kicker be a better fit for this team? And
I think a team that could fit that is the Texans, maybe.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say the Cardinals, but that's a divisional rival. I don't think that happens. But also, I don't think, for one thing, I don't think a team trades for a kicker. For two, I don't think the Niners give up on him after drafting him in the third round. And I was going to say,
Well,
like, I've never heard of a team like trading or cutting a third rounder immediately, but the Raiders literally did that like 3 or 4 years ago with Lynn Bowden Jr. So
well, I mean, here's what I'll say. You say you don't think the Niners will give up on a guy they drafted so high. That's kind of foreshadowing our next topic. But I wouldn't put it outside the realm of possibility because the Niners already have 2 kickers on the roster right now. And, you know, I don't think they can afford to lose games because of Jake Moody. Like, what a
no,
disaster. What a disaster it would be if we're looking at the 49ers next playoff, late playoff heartbreak, and it's, oh, Jake Moody shanks a field goal. And it's, oh, fuck. They should have paid Robbie Gould,
right. Well, it's funny because Daniel Carlson is like probably, in my opinion, he's the second best kicker in football behind Justin Tucker of the Ravens. He was on
I
the
would say so.
Vikings and he blew, huh?
I would say so.
Yeah, he was on the Vikings and he blew a game against I think the Seahawks in the playoffs because he missed a gimme field goal and they cut him at like after that offseason or whatever. Ends up with the Raiders and he's been money ever since. Um, I just
So you agree that it could happen?
I think
Because that's a perfect example of a team. The Vikings were probably more in a win now mode than the Raiders were.
well for sure. The main thing is yes, it's not worth it to you guys to have that be a problem. But if they really think that this Moody guy can be like the next great kicker, I know this might upset you or annoy you or something, but part of me wonders if they keep 2 kickers on the 53. Because that's what you have to do. If you really believe in him, if you don't believe in him, then yeah, you could trade him for a 7th round pick or another kicker.
I think they'll keep Jake Moody on the roster. I don't think they're gonna give up on him so soon, but it's definitely alarming, and he's got to figure it out quick. I know there's a lot of pressure on him because he has to adjust from college to the NFL, and he's on a win now team. I know, I've seen what that pressure can do to other players, right?
Yeah.
Not at kicker, but I think that the start that he got against the Raiders definitely probably had something to do with his struggles early on, because kicking is a huge mental, it's more than half the battle is probably mental than it is, actually having the best leg. And I think Jake Moody has a strong leg. He's been nailing them at practice. But when you get into a game, that's a completely different scenario. And what Josh McDaniels did was ice Jake Moody not once, but twice. I don't know if he did this to like send a big fuck you over to the opposing sideline, or if he just wanted other personnel in, but it was like, man, this is this kicker's first 2 kicks in the NFL, right? Or it might have been 2 of the 3 first kicks in the NFL. And well, he's in his own head now. Like, he's probably got imposter syndrome going on, and like, fuck, am I really cut out for this? Like it has definitely been on his mind, and he can say that it's not or whatever, but that's just how it goes. That's the life of a kicker.
I think Josh McDaniels broke Jake Moody.
Yeah, I think Josh McDaniels was just like, all right, I think he just wanted to send like a big middle finger over to the opposing sideline. And it was like, I'm just going to ruin your guys' 3rd round pick, so I don't have to worry about you guys like later on. Like, all right, wouldn't it be hilarious, Mike? Like I guess not for me. I would be pretty pissed off and upset. But let's just say hypothetical, Raiders versus 49ers in the Super Bowl, right? In Las Vegas, in the same stadium, and the game comes down to a game-winning kick, and Josh McDaniels uses his last timeout. You don't think Jake Moody would think about that?
Well, he might have. He could probably think about it, but it would either be
like, man, last time
redemption.
I was here. He'd be like, last time I was here, I missed. They fucking iced me. Like, I'm just trying to think about what the human brain thinks about, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure if I was a kicker, I'd be like, all right, I'm not going to miss this like last time. I'm not going to miss this like last time.
Well,
You know
also
what I
just
mean?
imagine being a rookie kicker in the Super Bowl. Oh, if you kick it in, you win it. If you don't, you're gonna hate
Yeah.
your life for the
There
next
goes
4
your
years.
career.
Yeah. So, anyways.
Yeah. But going back to the game and sort of getting off of the whole Jake Moody subject, Sam Darnold came in after Purdy in the offense went and scored a field goal, and I thought Sam Darnold looked fine, right? He made a couple good throws, and he was just Sam Darnold. He's got a good arm, and I think that's what Shanahan wants. It's just like, all right, I'm going to tell you where to go with the ball. No extracurricular shit. Just fucking do what I say. I think that's really what probably appeals Shanahan to, or appeals Sam Darnold to Kyle Shanahan, right? So I didn't think Darnold did anything to, I guess, set himself back in the depth chart that day. Like, he just ran the offense, and that's all Kyle wants him to do, and that's all Kyle wants out of a backup quarterback, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And it wasn't a very like inspiring performance out of Darnold. I don't even think they scored with him. They might have scored with him. I don't even remember. The game was a couple days ago now. But what I will go to is the third string quarterback, and he started off kind of shaky, like he did in the Raider game, but it wasn't as bad as how he performed in the Raider game. There was, it was just you saw the Raider game. How Lance kind of looks a little bit like, I guess, stiff when he gets in there and doesn't necessarily look like he's in a rhythm yet. Like, that's what it looked like to start off with, like the first drive or two. And, everybody, like, I'm just telling you from my experience, everybody was like on Twitter saying, yeah, I think this is it for Lance in San Francisco. Like, we spent 3 first-round picks on this, and it was like, there's no way. Like, he just didn't look good, and he threw an interception, right? But the interception, I wouldn't consider his fault necessarily. The defensive tackle made a great play, tipped the ball up on a screen, and there was another defensive tackle that dove for it and picked it off, and it almost got overturned, but there wasn't enough evidence to say one way or the other, and so the call on the field stood. And it just looked like, man, like, Lance kind of looked like, he was just he had this like look on the sideline. He was talking to Darnold, and it was just like, man, like, this is bad, right? And then Lance comes back out and he improves, right? And then keep in mind, this is the fourth quarter where Lance comes back out for like his next drive. I think he gets like 3 more drives in the fourth quarter after the interception, or possibly 4 more drives. But he looks much better, right, as the game is going along. And Lance hits a couple throws, and then there's a couple throws, like there was a drop on a wide open like dime, like right in the hands. I think it was number 86. I forget who that is. They should have caught the ball. And the 49ers had to punt it. And then on the next drive, Lance completed 6 completions in a row and drove down the field and scored a touchdown. And I'm sitting I was standing. I was pretty excited at home. And I hope I'm recalling it correctly, but I was like super excited for Lance because it really showed his resiliency. Like, I think that was sort of the story of the game was just how resilient Lance was, because it seemed like he couldn't catch a break. Whatever could go wrong did go wrong for him. Like in the Raiders game, and sort of at the beginning of the the Broncos game, or at least the beginning of when he got in. And Lance just battled. And then he came back and he wasn't throwing like dink and dunk plays. You know what I mean? Like the typical 49ers plays that they run where it's like a screen at the line of scrimmage. Like, yeah, there was like maybe one or two mixed in there, but there were a couple dimes. They were just like down the field. And Lance looked more and more comfortable and he got hot and his body language just completely changed and he finally gained confidence. Like this is, you saw, I mean, you were able to see the flashes of what the 49ers drafted him to be on Saturday night against the Broncos, right? It was so encouraging, and he actually showed glimpses of the quarterback that I think that he can be one day. I don't know if it'll be here, and we'll talk about that next. But Lance showed something very promising, and the reaction on social media was like, even Lance haters. I mean, there were haters that were quiet, but there was this one guy who has always been a Brock Purdy guy, even when Purdy was the third stringer. And he said Lance changed his mind that game. That's how good Lance played. Right. And then so it wasn't just that drive, but the 49ers defense made a stop and the 49ers got the ball back. And then I'm like, oh man, this is great because the Niners have a chance to win the game. I know it's just a preseason game, but I felt like it meant more than just that. We finally got an opportunity to see Lance, not in a monsoon, try and lead a game-winning drive, right? Which I don't think he had ever done before to that point. And he leads the Niners down the field with a lot of help from Ronnie Bell. Ronnie Bell, we'll talk about him in a second. He was the other player that really stood out in this game. I would consider Ronnie Bell probably the player of the game. But with that being said, Lance leads a drive down the field, and Ty Davis-Price gets a huge run to the left, and the 49ers are able to kick a field goal, right? A game-winning field goal. Lance, it was just so, like, it was crazy, right? I don't think you would ever see, like, people get that excited over a preseason game. I would even describe it, it felt magical. Like, after Lance scored the touchdown that I was referring to in the previous drive, the 49ers had an opportunity to go for two and get the lead there, but the 49ers players, the starters, were so excited for Trey Lance that they ran onto the field and got a 15-yard penalty. Brandon Ayuk ran onto the field and was like cheering for Lance after they scored that touchdown, right? And then so obviously it was like 4th and 17. Well, essentially it was 4th and 17 for like the 2-point conversion. And I'm sorry, but not many players are going to get that. Like, you have to be Patrick Mahomes. And so, going back to the whole victory formation thing, it was very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? It was encouraging to see Lance improve. And I think it's what he's shown over the past 2 years. That if you just get him some time to settle down and get into a rhythm, he gets hot and he plays better with more football that he plays. It's no secret that the 49ers drafted a project in Trey Lance, right? He was probably the rawest quarterback prospect to ever come out of the NFL draft. And he needed reps, and he has shown to improve from, if he starts the game and goes along, as long as he's not in a monsoon, he gets better as the game goes along. He gets more comfortable, and he's able to make, better throws. A lot of people made the comparison of Lance to sort of a boxer into maybe the first couple rounds he's feeling out the other boxer. And you can see that he's hesitant to throw the ball early on in a lot of the game, which leads him to looking really stiff. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses because there's a lot of balls that, like, all right, the dude's wide open, Lance. You have to make that throw. Like, that is who the play is designed to go to, and you're either not seeing it or you see it and you're just hesitating and you have to pull the trigger. But later in that game, he did improve. And he looked way better than Darnold looked. And honestly, if you put the way that Lance played towards the end of the Bronco game in the same offense that Purdy operated, you make it more dynamic. Because I think Lance probably could have done the same stuff that Purdy did in terms of what Shanahan was asking Purdy to do. Now, do I think that the offense gets into the same rhythm? We don't know. We won't know because we won't see it, right? Or we haven't seen it yet. And Purdy did a damn good job of stepping in there and leading that offense. But I don't think that there was anything that Purdy did in that first drive that I don't think Trey Lance couldn't do or could have gotten comfortable doing. Right? And then you add on top of that spacing out the defense to get the vertical threat, because Lance was I texted you, he was cooking. He was simply cooking the defense towards the end of the game. And he really showed a lot of people something when, a lot of people doubted him. So at very least, you can critique his quarterback play, right? There's going to be bad plays on film. There's bad plays for every quarterback. It's just people only want to overreact when it's Lance because he hasn't showed much. And so the more bad plays you see, the larger of the sample size that it is. And that's just going to go on until he gets solid game reps, right? I think that Lance showed a ton of resiliency, as I've said before. And I think this kid will eventually figure it out. And unfortunately, I don't know what team that's going to be for, because I think Purdy probably has the quarterback one job on lock. Unless, God forbid, Purdy gets injured and Darnold just sucks or, also gets hurt, because you never know with this football team. Shanahan just invents ways on how to get your quarterback hurt. Right? I think Lance showed something that he had to show. And unfortunately, and I was going to make this its own topic, after the game, Lance looked super good and got like 173 passing yards in the quarter and like 1 minute that he played. 173 passing yards in a quarter, practically. I mean, that's pretty damn good. And that's a huge improvement over Vegas last week. And I predicted that if Lance had a good game this week, the media was going to run with whatever narrative they wanted. But I predicted that the narrative was going to be that Trey Lance is inconsistent. No, they didn't go with that. ESPN, after the game, only showed Lance's interception. And they said Lance had another dismal performance. And it was apparent to anybody who saw the game. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, whoever it was on ESPN who put that on the teleprompter or who said it, it was just lazy. It was lazy analysis of the game. Because Lance really bounced back and they were not reporting the truth. And I think there's just this narrative going on about Trey Lance that he's no good, when really he's a talented young kid who hasn't gotten a great opportunity and has really been like the punching bag of 49ers media and social media. And I think he showed a ton of improvement and won the fucking football game. And so I'll get back to Lance in our next topic, but I want to talk about Ronnie Bell. Ronnie Bell, that was fucking incredible, and I think you played yourself into possibly being the starting third receiver. I think today at practice, there was a report that Ronnie Bell he even threw a pass in practice. Like, I'm guessing it was another trick play or something, but he was playing with the starters or had a couple plays with the starters. I like Juwan Jennings, but Ronnie Bell he looked like what I think the 49ers drafted Jalen Hurd to be. And I think Ronnie Bell has to make this football team. He is one of those, I guess, the yards after catch specialists that the 49ers have been doing so great. And I think he fits so well with what Purdy's going to do. Because if you get, I mean, just imagine, you can give the ball to Brandon Ayuk. You can give the ball to George Kittle. You can give the ball to Deebo Samuel, give the ball to McCaffrey. And now you add another receiver on top of that. And you spread out the field. And it's, I mean, what Purdy does so well is he rolls out and he's able to get the ball to players out in space. And the 49ers have some of the hardest to tackle players in the NFL. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, as I said, CMC. If you add another one on top of that, I know there's only one football to go around, but they are just going to barrel over defensive backs because they're not like the defensive backs back in the day. The defensive backs now have to be skinnier. They have to be quicker. They have to be taller in order to make plays. Right? They aren't how they were back in the day. I think guys are a little bit more agile, and the game is catered towards offense. They can't even put their hands on receivers without getting flags now. So, I mean, Ronnie, yeah, as Chicano said, a yak bro. That's what Ronnie Bell showed. He really showed like he can be one of the yak bros. And honestly, I just have a message for opposing defenses. Watch the fuck out. Do you have anything that you want to add on top of that, Mike?
We got another comment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. I'll take the comment. So why not keep Trey and let him develop? What is his true speed? So are you talking about Trey Lance's true speed? I would say that Trey Lance, his speed is probably similar to, at this point, I would probably say Ryan Tannehill, or maybe just a little bit faster than Ryan Tannehill. But Tannehill's more of a, he's more of a physical runner than Trey Lance is. Okay, yeah. Chicano said yes. I would keep Trey Lance and let him develop. But the problem is the 49ers timeline is different than Trey Lance's timeline. And it really upsets me because I really feel like if the 49ers would have given Lance the opportunity right out of the gate after he was drafted, number 3 overall, if they would have just gave him the reins, he would have been such a good player by now. But now, he had to split time in the preseason with Jimmy Garoppolo and got hurt against the Raiders. And it set back his development because he was playing behind the second string offensive line.
I think that point is theoretical. I don't think it's a fact that Trey Lance would be such a good player right now if he had played his rookie year.
It's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he has shown that he has gotten better with more reps. If he just gets through a game from the start of the game to the end of the game, I would rather the player be playing better at the end of the game than the start. But yeah. Go on.
I do agree that a quarterback needs reps to get, into the rhythm of playing NFL football. And that's why I was so curious about how he would do this preseason, just because he needs the reps for sure. Yeah, I would keep him and try to continue to develop him, but I think our first podcast, I said the problem for Trey Lance and the Niners is that, for one thing, I mean, he was a 3rd overall pick. He's already getting paid, but is this his 3rd season?
This is his 3rd year.
Okay, so next season is the final year of his rookie contract. You can add the 5th-year option, but that's like top 10 to 5-ish pay at that position. I think. I forget how the 5th-year option works, but I want to say he would get paid like top 10 quarterback money, which that's not happening. That's the problem with Trey Lance for me. And I think you said that essentially is his timeline is different than the Niners timeline. Niners need to win now. Yeah, Niners would need to win now. And that's how it's always been. That's how it's always been while they've had him. And
yes,
in hindsight, trading up to third overall pick to get this, you said he's the rawest quarterback in all of NFL draft history. I can tell you for a fact he's the most raw quarterback to ever get picked in the top 3 picks. Trent Richardson. Richardson from the Colts.
Anthony Richardson.
Anthony. He's not as raw as Trey Lance, but I mean he was a top 5 pick, but still far and away different. Like Trey Lance is the most raw pick to get picked in the first round for a quarterback. That's a fact. But to do that on a win now team, it's like, again, in hindsight, why the fuck did you ever think that was a good idea? I get the thought process of like, oh, he'll develop over a year, just like Pat Mahomes under Alex Smith for the Chiefs, and then he'll play the final week of the season because we'll be the 1 or 2 seed, and then it'll be like, oh, that looks promising, and then the next year he starts. And I'm pretty sure he didn't start the final week of the regular season, but he did start like 2 weeks because Jimmy G was out or whatever happened against the Texans and the Cardinals, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think inconsistent is the word for Trey Lance as far as those games, like the end of this Broncos preseason game. It's like, yeah, he's always had the arm talent. He was slinging it, and his the zip on his football is noticeable,
It comes out of his hands so effortlessly, dude. When you see Trey Lance throw a deep ball, it literally looks like it flies off his fingertips.
Yeah, and that's talent. Point being, my issues with Trey Lance stem from, I said it before, I think he's had the perfect culmination of excuses. Oh, he's super raw. Oh, every time he gets a chance, he gets injured. And I think right now his excuse is that he's not playing with the starters and he's not playing against starting defenses. He's playing against third and fourth stringers. That's what he just did against the Broncos. He just played against third and fourth stringers. So, like, how serious can you take it? You could take his accuracy seriously. You could take his decision-making pretty seriously, yeah. But would it look different against the starting defense? Yeah. I don't know. I think it's 2 weeks in a row that he's gotten gradually better, whether it's just a little bit as the game went on, whether it's just a little bit or, oh, he won the game, like, solid. I disagree that the interception wasn't on him. I think it is. Either way, that ball's getting tipped. Yeah. I think either way, the ball's getting tipped. So,
I mean,
you have to throw it. You have to lob it over him. You can't let the defensive lineman touch that ball.
Yeah, I mean, he could have thrown it a little bit better, but the defensive player just made a great play of reading the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you going to put a ton of hang time on it? And like, I don't know. I just feel like the play was doomed from the start because they read right through it.
Yeah, but yes, the issue for Trey Lance is that next season is his final year under contract, and if it's clear as day that Brock Purdy is a starter, why do you keep Trey Lance? Honestly.
Because this team goes through quarterbacks like no other team, and you can probably keep as many as you can take. I think Trey Lance is by far better than Brandon Allen.
Mm-hmm. So I guess here's my question. Would you rather, and think about this for like Trey Lance too, and the team that would trade for him, would you rather trade Trey Lance right now and get, I think you get, if a team's serious, you might get a 4th round pick, but I think you get a 5th round pick. Okay. Trade Trey Lance right now for a 5th round pick. You keep Brandon Allen on the roster. I think that's his name, right? and you get something in return. Or you keep him for the next 2 seasons, technically. So this season and next season. Or maybe you trade him next year, maybe. But let's just say the other theoretical option is you keep him until his contract runs out. They definitely don't give him the 5th-year option, and he walks in free agency. Which option do you like more?
I like keeping Trey.
Okay. I think as far as in the possibility that Purdy and Darnold get hurt, or Purdy gets hurt and Sam Darnold sucks. Damn Sarnold.
That damn Sarnold.
Yeah, if he sucks, and then it's like, well, we got to let Trey Lance go in there. Yeah, it makes sense. It does. I guess my issue is just the conundrum for Trey Lance is Brock Purdy. And his rookie season, it was Jimmy Garoppolo. And it was, like you said, the fact that this team is in win-now mode. And it's clear as day that Shanahan does not have any faith that Trey Lance can win football games for them. At least not relative to Brock Purdy or, at the time, his rookie year, Jimmy Garoppolo. His second season, Jimmy Garoppolo was clearly on the way out, and they had no other option. They had Purdy on the roster, but, I mean, how does that look if coming out of camp, Mr. Irrelevant beats out the 3rd overall pick? That's the worst thing that could ever happen. Instead, what happened was, Brock Purdy proved it, right? But what if Shanahan knew all along, like, fuck, dude, Purdy is kind of looking better. Just like you said, maybe Aiden O'Connell's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe that was always the thing, was, fuck, dude, Purdy might be better than Trey Lance. God damn it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing for Lance is if you were to trade him now, he gets those 2 years on this contract to try to earn, if not a spot, a starting role for another team, like, say, the Vikings, the Buccaneers, right? I don't think I could think of an AFC team that actually needs a young quarterback other than the Raiders, but they have O'Connell, so it's like it's not worth it. So Titans, there you go. But they just drafted what's his face. Yeah. So I mean, I think the 2 teams that make sense are the Vikings and the Buccaneers. There's probably another one that I'm not thinking of, but
I've got a couple of destinations that I think are good for Trey Lance.
Mm-hmm.
So these are 3 destinations where I think he might get on the field the soonest, right? I've got, like you said, the Buccaneers. I think that the Bucs might be able to get a Bart. You know, they can. What's a 5th or 6th round pick, like you said, for a guy, for a 23-year-old kid who was just the 3rd pick in the draft, and the 49ers never knew what to do with him. They had no plan for him. It pisses me off, and it'll piss me off when he gets traded, right? But I've already accepted it. Okay? They would be getting a kid who is talented and just needs to see the field, and he has the tools to be a top-tier quarterback in this league. He has the tools. He just has to put it together, and you have to see whether he's good or not. I think the Buccaneers have time to waste. They clearly have time to waste to put Baker Mayfield out there. I don't think he's going to do anything with them. The next team, and this to me would be like these next 2 teams I think would be a more appealing scenario for Lance, would be Atlanta. You would be pairing Trey Lance with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson. I think that's a good pairing. Now, Atlanta might be all in with Desmond Ridder, but who the fuck is Desmond Ridder? Come on. Like, he was a 2nd round pick, and maybe he might end up being good, right? It might be like, like I said, I don't want to write people off too early, but if you ask me who I would rather start out of those 2 players, I would rather start Trey Lance. And Lance, no matter where he goes, if he gets traded, he is not going to start week 1. No matter what, unless unless Brock Purdy tears his ACL walking to the fridge, tonight or within the next 2 weeks, and unless Sam Darnold, is Sam Darnold or something else happens, I think Trey Lance is not going to start for any team week 1. And I think that there will be a little bit of an adjustment period to a new system, but you might find a coach who will find the value in possibly trying to develop the guy with this tool set. So my third team that he might see the field sooner rather than later is the Washington Commanders. I don't know if Sam Howell is going to be good. I don't really know much about Sam Howell. But if you asked me, I might rather start Trey Lance.
I think the reason why you say that you would rather start Trey Lance over Howell and Ritter is because you haven't seen them. I think those teams are kind of, for lack of a better term, stuck with those quarterbacks, but it really depends on how those teams feel about those quarterbacks. Because if the Falcons feel confident in Ritter, and if the Commanders feel confident in Howell, I still see reason for them to trade for Trey Lance, solely because, the prospect that he is and the potential that he has and could become is worth giving up a 5th-round pick. Any team should give up a 5th-round pick for him if the Niners are really trying to trade him for a 5th-round pick, because backup quarterbacks are worth it. And that's why I agree that the Niners should keep him. But if they really do want to get rid of him and just get past it or something, I don't know why, or if they're just
just rip the Band-Aid off, right?
Yeah. Then it would probably be better to just get something for him now rather than just force him on the back of the fucking quarterback, depth chart and never let him see the light of day. And then when he hits free agency, he's going to get a shitty deal. At least if you trade him now, he gets the opportunity somewhere else to potentially earn it, because he's not getting that here. That's just a fact. That was my question going into this preseason. It's been answered. I said before training camp, it should have been a competition between Lance and Purdy, not a competition between Lance and Darnold. And if Purdy wins it, okay. But because you didn't even let that be a thing, Shanahan, it makes it clear what you think, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So Chicano says, I agree. Sooner, probably best. The longer he sits, the less value he'll seem to other teams.
And it's not just value to other teams and value to the Niners, getting in return. It's also just for Trey Lance as a human being and for his career. If you just, again, like I said, just cram him onto 3rd on the depth chart for the next 2 years, he's going to hit free agency and somebody will sign him. And he'll go probably to the highest bidder or whatever. Or if he's smart, he'll go to whatever system works for him and opportunity shows the most promise to him. But if he could force a trade, I shouldn't say that, but if he could get traded to a team like the Vikings, who on the last year of the contract for Kirk Cousins have very good receiving options, especially arguably the best receiver in football. I would argue that, but I would want to go there. The Buccaneers also have great receiving options, although they're getting older.
Here's why I think the Vikings would be interested. So you mentioned the Vikings. Here's why I think they would be interested.
I already know what you're going to say,
Lance is from over there, and then also they got a clear look at him during the joint practices last year. So maybe they saw something that they liked. Maybe they didn't. Right. I think if Lance got traded to the Vikings this year, he is not going to see the field. because
He won't see
they
the
are.
field, but he'll get a year to learn the system, and then next year he might be the only quarterback on the roster.
I
He might be.
am willing to bet that if Lance stayed as the third string quarterback here, he would have a better opportunity of seeing the football field sooner than if he went to Minnesota. Now, staying as the long-term guy, that's different. I think Kirk Cousins is right now better than Trey Lance. I don't think
Yeah.
it's even close.
Yeah.
Now,
I think
who do I think will be better for them going forward? I think it would probably, I mean, I would say with the tool set and how old Kirk Cousins is and how it hasn't worked out so far, I would say Trey Lance because you just need something new, and Lance might be that that cheap opportunity to see what you have, and you can bring in another guy on top of Lance. If you want to hedge your bet, you can.
yeah,
You
it's
don't have to
tough.
put all your eggs in that basket. I mean, look what the fucking 49ers did. They brought in Sam Darnold.
It's tough in this case of the Vikings because if the Niners can't even bring it to themselves after having 2 years with him, three off seasons, but 2 years with Lance, and not even making it a possibility that he gets a chance to start. If you're the Vikings, you trade for him. Let's see what we can get here. I mean, they also have Kellen Mond.
Who
Yeah, it's hard
hasn't
to like.
shown really any promise.
Yeah, I haven't seen him, so I can't say. It's hard to say that like next season, if it were Lance and Mond on the Vikings, that they wouldn't try to go get another quarterback. They probably would. They'd have to. Like they would have to go get like a Jacoby Brissett like the Commanders did. You know, a veteran who can like win you 8 games, maybe, you know. And
I
if your
think
talent is really
whoever.
that good, go ahead.
No, finish.
Well, if your talent's really that good, then you know a guy like Brissett could possibly bring you to the playoffs, especially in the NFC, not the AFC. You know, but I just my thing is where if Trey Lance gets traded, what makes sense to me is a room. I do agree with the Commanders and the Falcons only because the quarterbacks are not proven. They haven't done anything to prove anything yet. But this is the
I'm
year
still
that they're going to
listening.
get their chance. Yeah, this is the year that those quarterbacks are going to get that chance. If Howell blows it, then Brissett comes in. Yada yada yada. If Ritter blows it, I mean, it's only Taylor Heineke. Heineke?
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost said Heineken. Behind him, you know, I think the Falcons make a lot of sense. If it weren't for Zach Wilson, I would say the Jets make a lot of sense, but it sounds like Wilson's actually kind of coming around.
Yeah.
Well, he's coming around because of Aaron Rodgers and having that veteran to help him, which is why I think the Vikings make sense because you get a veteran to help teach and show the ropes, and then it's just tough because it's like I think the Vikings look at themselves as a win now team as well. So let's say they go to the playoffs this year. Let's say maybe they win the division, maybe the Lions do. I don't know. But they go to the playoffs, right? They're the 6th, 5th seed, maybe the 3rd seed. Do I really think that the Vikings would go all in on Trey Lance next season? Fuck no. Fuck no. They would run it back with Kirk Cousins easily. How much money do you want, Kirk? If you're the 3rd seed, right?
Mm.
So I get that. It's just I think the backup quarterback position is worth giving up a 5th round pick for a guy like Trey Lance who has all the tools, right? And seeing can this guy potentially become the guy that he was drafted to be? Because if so, it is so worth a 5th round pick. And if not, fuck, like we wasted that pick, but we could trade back in the 4th round and get it back. You know, I don't know. Trey Lance is just tough right now. Because like you said, like it's not guaranteed that he would get like the opportunity, or you think he'd have a better chance with the Niners than with the Vikings.
Well, no. I think this season, to see the field this season, I have more confidence that Kirk Cousins is going to stay healthy than I do with Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold both staying on the field ahead of Trey Lance.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And it would also just be hard for Lance because if he gets traded, then he has to learn a new system during the regular season,
Yeah, but I mean, Garoppolo did it and fucking found himself being like the highest paid player of all time at the time.
Yeah. I mean, that's all it takes is the right opportunity and the right scenario. If Lance got lucky and he goes to the Falcons or the Commanders or Vikings or whoever, like, that's all it takes. And that's why I think it makes sense now, is because he still has that other year, so that a team could look at it like, we have this year and next year to find out, the team that trades for him. But
I mean, Raymond Martinez on Twitter, or I guess X, whatever you want to call it now, he mentioned that if he's Lance, maybe it might be worth it to go to the Miami Dolphins because Tua has an injury history. He has the connection with Mike McDaniel, and there's some pretty good weapons there. So,
yeah, I agree. I feel bad for not thinking of that because, I mean, it's the same offense essentially. McDaniel was there back when they drafted Trey Lance, and yes, Tua has a history of injuries, and Teddy Bridgewater was his main backup last season. He's gone now. He's with the Lions. I don't even. Oh, it's Mike White. I think Mike White is the backup for the Dolphins. I could be wrong.
But I mean, know it's not Mike Jones. Ooh.
Yeah, but I do like that for the Vikings or the Dolphins.
Dude, if I was the Detroit Lions, I mean, Lance has shown resilience. Why wouldn't I bring him in? Well, I guess you have Teddy Bridgewater, but like Lance,
you also have Hooker, second or third round pick.
So that's
second round talent.
So just kind of rule out the Lions. But
that was my thing that I said in the first podcast was these teams are gonna favor a player that has 3 or 4 more years in their contract over a guy who's getting paid more. I mean, actually, trading for Trey Lance doesn't make sense because he's getting paid 3rd overall pick money.
So his career is essentially over.
No, it's just it actually makes less sense now that I think about it. It makes less sense for him to get traded because not many teams can afford him, literally, to sit on the bench.
Well, think about how much quarterbacks cost nowadays. And if you can get him for a 5th round pick, I mean, the money might be a little bit steep. I don't know how much he's still guaranteed left on his contract. But, I mean, Lance could potentially be a good quarterback. And good quarterbacks don't fall in your lap with 5th round picks. They fall in your lap with Mr. Irrelevant picks. Okay. I'm just playing. But I mean, Chicano actually brings up a great idea. I mean, he says we should trade Lance for O'Connell. And you know what's funny is O'Connell has looked great. O'Connell has looked absolutely great. I think I'm too emotionally invested in Lance to make that trade because O'Connell was just a 5th round pick. I still think Lance is going to end up being a good quarterback. I just think he needs reps to do so, and he's not going to get it anytime soon. So, unfortunately.
Trey Lance counts against the cap. $9 million this year, a little bit above that. $10.8 million next year. So let me, if I could find where to search a player's name.
While you do that, I'm gonna take the remaining questions. So Chicano also asks, question for both. If the 49ers had a time machine, who would we get instead of Lance?
That's obvious.
Justin Fields? Yeah.
I think
would
so.
say I would be inclined to say Justin Fields, but if the Niners had a time machine, could we go back just a little bit further to where they don't make the trade at all and
Oh yeah, actually, yeah.
it they just draft a player to complement Jimmy Garoppolo or to complement Nick Bosa? Like, could we have gotten an offensive tackle or somebody like I saw a list of the players that were drafted after Lance, and there was plenty of talent. Have you seen the list of players that went after Lance?
Isn't that like Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, players like
Let's see.
that? Or is that a different year?
No, I think that is.
What year was the draft? 2020.
It was 2021. So let me share my screen here. So right here. So Warren Sharp tweets this. 49ers traded 3 first-round picks to draft Trey Lance, number 3rd overall. If it wasn't bad enough, the 10 players drafted after Lance. Kyle Pitts, I wouldn't have traded 3 first-round picks and a 3rd for Kyle Pitts. Honestly, I wouldn't have done it for any of these guys, really.
No.
But
you're doing it for a quarterback. It's obvious.
But the Niners were at number 3 overall, and these were 10 players after. The Niners had number 12 in the draft. So they could have had probably Micah Parsons or Rashawn Slater. I would have loved Penei Sewell. Honestly,
a lot of people argue that Pat Surtain II is the best corner in football. I think he would have made a lot of sense for you guys, and I think Micah Parsons would have been the greatest pick, one of the greatest picks of all time, to pair with Bosa. I mean, yeah. In hindsight, it's like, yeah, you should have just traded up a little to go get a Pat Surtain or a Micah Parsons, but that's why it's hindsight 2020, right? It's like, of course.
So Chicano's just, curious in the other options. He's just adding on to his previous comment. They could have had Mac Jones at 12, or they could have had Justin Fields at 12. Right? Justin Fields, was he there at 12? I don't even remember. But
I don't know. I think the Bears traded up to get him. I don't know if it was like 12 or 10 or what, but
I forget. So maybe they couldn't have had Justin Fields, but I would have been fine staying at 12 and getting Mac Jones. Am I fine with trading 3 firsts and a 3rd? Honestly, not for anybody, but definitely not Mac Jones. So I was fine. I was fine with them, taking a kid with high upside. It's just it was very, very discouraging that they didn't have a single plan to use him. So I think we're ready to.
I just, my issue with saying that
is that he got hurt?
No, well, that's an excuse, certainly. But also, bear in mind, the thing that we can't see, and I've said this before, the thing that we can't see and we just don't know is, like, you can say they never had a plan for him. Okay, well, I think the plan was semi-obvious. They knew that he was raw, exceptionally raw, but he had it, right? He was not going to play his rookie year. But then the second year, it was like Garoppolo was coming off of like the injury. But also, it was just, it's inevitable. Garoppolo's going to get traded. It doesn't seem like he wants to be there anymore. Yada, yada, yada. Trey Lance is going to go in there and play. And maybe that works out. He gets injured again. The perfect excuse, essentially. And I think Shanahan really did want to try this dual threat thing with him, but I also wonder, it's clear to me that Shanahan does not believe Trey Lance is ready to start NFL football games. It is clear as fucking day. Why? Is it because, he just hasn't had the opportunities? That's maybe partially a reason, and more than that an excuse to say that. I think it's because I wonder if it's because the thing that we don't see is at practice. The thing that we don't see is in the quarterback room, the meeting rooms, right? Does Kyle Shanahan think that up here he does not have it? As raw as he was coming out as a prospect, that makes sense to me. It makes sense to me that his processing is just not ready to play against NFL starters. It makes sense to me that that's why Shanahan decided to run him so much when he would play against NFL starters, because he didn't trust him to throw the ball. It's not because he can't throw the ball. He obviously can. He could throw it better than Purdy. He could throw it better than Darnold. It's because he doesn't trust him to make the right decision, to throw it accurately, right? That's what it seems like to me. So what causes that? I think it's things that we don't see. I think it's in the meeting room. I think it's in, like I said, right? I think it's just that he's so raw and he's hardly played football that it's hard for him. And that sucks. And that it's rough, but he's, yeah, it's like they're essentially asking a high school football player with like 1 to 2 years of experience to play NFL football. You can't do that. You cannot do that. And again, it's the perfect excuse, but that's just what it is to me. Yeah, sorry. That's what it.
I mean, Mike is not emotionally attached to Trey Lance like I am. So Mike is giving his, hold on, Alex is talking shit in the fantasy chat. Mike is giving his, I guess, brutal, honest analysis of the situation from his perspective. And, Chicano says very good points, and I agree. And for the most part, I agree with what you say, Mike. I agree with the logic that Shanahan has kept Trey Lance off the field. Like, I get it. And I can see, all right, maybe he's not ready to be the passer that he is, but he's an athlete. So we're going to have him line up and run the football, and he'll get used to game speed as he goes along. But I think that Shanahan and John Lynch should have been much more careful and not be irresponsible, because that's just what it was. It was criminally irresponsible. They could have won Super Bowls, several Super Bowls by now, had they not made the trade to go up. Look, every scout knew Lance only had X amount of reps. Everybody knew that he was raw and that he was like, all right, the Niners didn't just draft him and then all of a sudden, oh shit, you didn't play football? No. You're figuring out every single thing about this kid. You don't just trade up and then study. That's stupid. That's all right. I'm sorry. That is about the most irresponsible thing you can do in terms of the draft, is trade up just because you need a guy, and then you move all this draft capital, all these assets, and you don't know which guy you're taking, because that's what they said. They just said, "Oh, we just wanted to get in the top 5," and they didn't have a specific player in mind. It was, we want one of the top 5 guys. They said that they liked all of them, and they said they were going to do more homework on it and everything. Why? This team just a year prior was in the Super Bowl, and you claim that they didn't make the playoffs because the quarterback couldn't stay on the field, and that's why you had to get another quarterback. And this was their words. It's not Jimmy Garoppolo's play. It was just his availability. That's why they got his replacement, and they wanted a guy on a rookie deal, right? Did they not know that not all quarterbacks in the draft work out? And did none of their scouts tell them, hey, this kid didn't play a lot. Or did the scouts tell Shanahan, and Shanahan just made up his mind and was stubborn as hell? And it's like, no, you know what? This kid ran in college. That's clearly going to translate to the NFL. North Dakota State was like the best team. They went 17-0, and you can say that has a huge proponent to do with Lance, right? But they were good with Carson Wentz. And I think they've won how many national championships in their division against those schools? It doesn't matter. They have a pretty good program. And I'm not trying to discredit what Lance did. I'm trying to say that the 49ers were not careful when they made this selection. And I remember telling you, this was like, I said, they better get this pick right. And like, this is what the 49ers did is what any other owner would fire their coach and GM for. What they have done right now with Trey Lance. Completely mishandled the situation. And I'm not even saying that Kyle deserves to be fired right now. I still say you give him one more year at least to see if they can win with this window. Because if you change it to another coach, I don't know if you're going to, it's just going to be too big of a change with as many veterans as they have. You're not going to move on to a Jim Harbaugh kind of coach who's going to make them better, moving off of Mike Singletary. That's not going to happen at this stage with this team. Shanahan has good enough plays, but there's no excuse why you don't win the Super Bowl this year. If you trade away Trey Lance and you run out of quarterbacks, shame on you, right? You don't get that fucking excuse again. You've had it how many years already? Just going through quarterbacks, right? And Shanahan said today that Lance just sort of missed the opportunities, and I'll get to that in a second because I didn't really formally introduce the topic yet because we've been dialed in on this Lance thing since the previous topic. Shanahan said that Lance just missed those windows of opportunities that he was given. They were like small opportunities. They were going to start him in year 2, and then he got injured. Well, he wouldn't have got injured if you just called the plays for him, like how you call Mr. Irrelevant the plays, and not use him like a running back. Any quarterback would have gotten hurt. Lamar Jackson gets hurt. Lamar Jackson runs the ball a lot. Yeah, he won an MVP one season, but eventually guys that get a lot of contact with middle linebackers, running up the middle, they get hurt. Eventually, they don't last long in the NFL. And that's who you spent 3 first-round picks on a guy that you're just going to continue over and over to send, getting blown up. You're going to cut back spending. You lose. All right. Aaron Banks ended up working out, but they lost a Pro Bowl guard in Laken Tomlinson, transitioning from Garoppolo to Trey Lance. They were fully ready to downgrade the offensive line for Lance now, or at least at the time, 2022. Aaron Banks ended up being a great replacement. But you did not give Lance the same opportunities that you have given these other guys. And to potentially move off of them after 4 games, after spending 3 firsts and a third, do I look stupid? I mean, well, knowing the internet, I'm going to get a flood of comments saying yes. But, I mean, Jed York certainly thinks I look stupid. Right? How does he put up with that shit? I'm like, clearly I'm upset right now. Yeah, I'm with you, Chicano. F them. I'm clearly upset right now, but they have mismanaged Trey Lance since he walked in the door, because you can attribute it to his injury as to why he didn't get on the field in year 1. But Shanahan said that it was going to be hard for any rookie to beat out Jimmy Garoppolo. And if that's the case, why move up? Did you not study before you did it? Come on. Did you guys have like completely get like hammered on that day and decide, hey, I'm gonna call up the Dolphins and like, hey, let's do this idea. Fuck Jimmy, right? Like, come on. And then Jed York came out and said Jimmy Garoppolo still has the opportunity to be a long-term guy, depending on how the situation plays out. I'm sorry, what? Jed York actually said that. I saw a report. I can't find it now because anytime you Google Jed York, Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, you get, I mean, it's been so much time since then.
It's
and
flooded.
the first time I called into Grant's show, I asked him, I said, what is the plan with Trey Lance? And you know what he said? You know what Grant said? Because I asked him about what Jed York said, and he said, that's assuming they have a plan. And I thought he was crazy. I was like, of course they have a plan. They didn't just move up to get him. No, they didn't have a plan. Like, all right, the plan was to just get a rookie. I don't even think they like loved Lance like before they made the trade. So that's mistake number one, is not doing your homework before making that trade. I think they wanted Deshaun Watson, and then it turns out that he's a sex predator. And then they missed out on Matt Stafford, and they panicked. And they said, oh, shit, we're stuck with Jimmy. Okay, be stuck with Jimmy. You got to the Super Bowl with him. Do it again. Don't mortgage the future on a win-now team when you can use the – I mean, maybe there would have been a – like if Jimmy fell flat in 2021 – you could probably have a higher draft pick and draft another quarterback and just run it back. Right? Like, wasn't that the plan already? To just draft a quarterback and see how it goes? And then you get to actually move off of Jimmy Garoppolo instead of keeping him around, breathing down Trey Lance's neck the entire time. You put unnecessary pressure on that kid. You humiliated Trey Lance for 2 years now. You have absolutely humiliated the kid. He has been the punching bag for the media, and you don't push back on it. What is that? I'm gonna let you go because Chicano brings up a good point. We need honesty.
I have 3 points, but this first part isn't part of those points. I just wrote these 3 points down as you spoke. Sorry, what was that last thing you just said?
We need honesty.
No, the Trey Lance stuff. I'm embarrassing him. I don't really think the Niners have embarrassed him until this year. I think he got hurt his second year when he was going to be the starter, right? Like the Niners were letting him go out and be the starter last season, and had he not gotten hurt, it's either he succeeds or Trey Lance embarrasses himself. But we didn't get that, right? That's the big thing for me. Having no plan for him is the embarrassing part, or
probably.
I see it. I see how it can be taken as them not having a plan. I think you're probably right that they didn't have a concrete plan. Maybe the way I should put it is that they didn't have how do I put it? It wasn't a plan, it was an idea. Right? They said, we just lost this Super Bowl because the opposing team had the quarterback, right? In Patrick Mahomes. So we need to get the quarterback. And I think that they trade up to third overall pick, which that in itself is kind of like, what are you really thinking is going to come out of that? Like, you're going to get the third best quarterback in the draft, theoretically. Obviously, in hindsight, Zach Wilson is not the second best quarterback of that draft class, but why? I mean, the Jaguars probably wouldn't budge. They wouldn't give a shit what you offered them. They'd say, we're going to take Trevor Lawrence, But, trading up to third overall, like you said, without even knowing who you're going to pick yet, that is issue number one, okay? So my first point, sort of in response to what you said earlier about they didn't do their homework. It's not that they didn't do their homework. It's simply that the Niners made the wrong decision. And that's not Lance's fault, and that's not even a knock on Trey Lance. I think I said it the last episode. In hindsight, Trey Lance should have never been picked. I don't even think he should have been a first-round pick. And I think at the time it made sense. At the time, when the Niners picked him, I said they made the right pick. I thought so. Because there were concerns about Justin Fields. Because I forget what the concerns were, but there were concerns. Maybe it's because Ohio State quarterbacks historically don't succeed in the NFL. Maybe that was it. I don't know. And then it was either Justin Fields or Mac Jones, and I was concretely, there's no way Mac Jones is that guy, is the difference maker. The only reason Mac Jones makes sense for the Niners, like you said, for one thing, is if they don't trade up. Two, is that he's on a rookie contract. That's it. That's the only reason why he's worth it to the Niners over Jimmy Garoppolo, is that he's cheaper, but he would be the same guy. But Niners made a horribly wrong decision. And you've convinced me today that it is, if they cut him, trade him, whatever they do, this is the worst. I refuse to call Trey Lance a bust, and that's being nice
because his career's not over.
Yeah. But I will say that this is the worst pick of all time. I can say that over Jamarcus Russell. Mm-hmm. Because your wordage.
They're talking about that in the comments right now too.
Okay, your wordage before, if that's a word, was if Trey Lance doesn't work out with the Niners, or whatever happens with Trey Lance, it doesn't work with the Niners, he is the biggest bust of all time. And I was like, no, he's not a bigger bust than Jamarcus Russell, because Jamarcus Russell did it himself. This is the worst pick of all time, if this goes the way that it looks like it's going, because they traded up so much. And they simply made a horrible decision from the get-go, even trading up to third overall, like you said, without even knowing who they're going to pick. That's why teams wait until the day of the draft, is because you trade up when you know who you're getting. It's just stupid.
The Niners traded up not knowing which guy they were going to get. It could have gone. It could have gone like several different ways. Maybe Trey Lance could have gone second overall to the Jets, and then they're stuck with Zach Wilson. And Zach Wilson hasn't shown anything in the NFL, and he's actually gotten an opportunity. So, and I'm not even willing to say Zach Wilson is a bust, because he might end out being good learning from Rodgers.
That's what it's kind of sounding like, is like, oh, he actually is rejuvenating. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I think in hindsight, it's pretty clear that Justin Fields was the choice to make there with the trade up. I think trading up from the get-go was a stupid fucking decision and should not have happened. You should have just kept building on the defense or getting offensive linemen at 12th overall, whatever you guys were originally at. But I understood, like, Jimmy G wasn't going to last forever. So it's like, yeah, we need to find a quarterback eventually. And it's not like we're going to play ourselves into third overall or first overall. You weren't going to do that. So at some point you had to pull the trigger. It's just pulling that trigger and it not working out looks so bad. The only thing that's giving the Niners or Shanahan credibility is Mr. Irrelevant and Brock Purdy. If that doesn't work out, this will be worse than that offseason when Jim Harbaugh's team just imploded. This will be worse. It will be.
Yeah. Because at least the Niners, after Harbaugh, still had Kaepernick, and, they still had at least, well, no, it was pretty bad after that. They still had Kaepernick, though.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. It'll be right there with it. It'll be right there with it. Actually, I'm going to do Well, yeah. So, Trey Lance, whatever happens out of this, I think, like I said, it's pretty clear that Justin Fields was the pick. And actually, I should explain. The reason why is because he had more reps. He had the tape for you to determine, can he be good? Or is he actually not, like, do we not see it in him? And maybe that's what Shanahan came out with was based off of what I see with Fields. I don't see it. I don't see him becoming the next great quarterback. Whereas Trey Lance has the tools, right? So if that's the case, and like I said, Mac Jones was never going to be a top 5 quarterback. So in that sense, maybe it's the right decision, but it all comes down to it being a win now team. It's like, why? It's tough. It's tough to say we need to draft a quarterback now when you're already a win now team. It's like, why not just build up the team and keep going with the quarterback that got you to a Super Bowl? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, when they drafted Lance, I mean, I know you said it took you a couple weeks or whatever, but like pretty quickly you were like, yeah, get Jimmy out of here. Like, let's go Lance, right?
Yeah, like, all right, if you're going to make that move and get this kid, and everyone said he needed reps. Everyone said he needed reps, except for Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan was the only person to say, he's not good enough to start in front of Jimmy, yada, yada, yada. Okay, you want to start the season off with Jimmy? Fine. You want to have that safety blanket? But like, they did the dual quarterback system, and Trey ended up getting hurt behind the backup offensive line, which stunted his growth. I'd call that mismanagement by Shanahan. I mean, Trey could have gotten hurt behind the backup offensive line. I mean, behind the starting offensive line at some point during the season. That didn't happen. It was in a preseason game when they were trying to absolutely dog the Raiders. And you know what? Like, I hope it was worth it, Kyle, because you stunted Lance's growth there. But it didn't seem like you were going to go all in with him anyway. And when you finally decided you were going to go all in with him, you changed up the offense and started using him as a running back. You know, if Nick Mullins could throw for I guess the second most or the most passing yards through 14 games as a rookie, why couldn't you draw a good enough play call for the 3rd overall pick in the draft, a talented player, to have some sort of success? Why do you have to run him in between the tackles and try? Like, he got hurt against Arizona running in between the tackles, and they could have won that. They should have won that game. They outgained the Cardinals in yards, and Kyle Shanahan went for it on 4th down like 4 times instead of kicking field goals, and they would have won the fucking game. But let's blame Lance on that because the quarterback always gets blame. And against the Texans, Lance won a must-win football game and got better as the game went along against the Texans. The Texans were garbage. Arizona wasn't at the beginning of the year. So, I mean, you can look at those 2 games a little bit differently, but definitely I think Lance did enough in both of those games to win the game. The difference in the Cardinals game was the difference was the coaching decisions, going for it so much on 4th down. It didn't pay off. It didn't pay off at all.
Well, didn't they hardly let him throw the ball in that game?
They ran him 11 times.
And how many times did he pass the ball?
Let me look that up. So,
okay, while you look that up, one of my points, Trey Lance is going to teach the NFL a major lesson going forward in drafting quarterback prospects. Teams will not draft quarterbacks as raw as him in the first 15 picks ever again. Never. Mm-hmm. Well, I shouldn't say never, but not for a long time. So go ahead.
Okay, so Lance was 15 of 29. So he ended up throwing 29 times, which is, I mean, that's a lot.
Okay.
But I want to see
50% completion percentage.
Yeah, 51.7. So, I mean, the Cardinals were a good team at that time.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up being the wild card team and getting embarrassed against the Rams in the playoffs, but at the time they were like 8-0 and the best offense in football. The defense played their hearts out, and the Niners could have squeaked away a victory with their backup quarterback who had a broken finger, but they used him a lot as a running back, and he sprained his MCL, or he got a knee sprain of some sort. So, I mean, I'm ready to sort of move on to what's current right now, but I'll let you finish.
2 more points. First, not part of my main 3 points, but so you blame Shanahan for the broken finger. You blame Shanahan for his broken ankle.
I blame him for the broken ankle. The broken finger, it's just I blame Shanahan for not being more careful with Lance and just, naming him the starter initially after he already traded the capital up for him.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like there's not really much Shanahan could have done besides play Trey with the starters and not risk him getting hurt with the backup offensive line. But okay, Trey's the backup,
but he needs the reps.
And he needs the reps. That's true. But I think he needed the reps in games that mattered.
Yeah, I guess. I
would have wanted him getting reps with the starters because ideally with your franchise guy, you want him playing with the starters.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was hoping for this preseason too. But I forget the context of the broken finger. My thing with the broken ankle, I understand the feelings towards the play call of having him run up the middle of the offensive line. And the counter to that is like, well, Lamar Jackson has done it, and now Jalen Hurts does every 4th and 1, 3rd and 1. It's a little different on that case, but still. It's tough because, yes, I mean, running a quarterback by design, quick little hike, like, and then run forward, it's like he's running headfirst into a pile of 300-pound men. Yeah, it's not ideal. But, I mean, that brings me all the way back to, like, kind of my main point with him is, like, why do you think Shanahan was doing that when he's done that with no other quarterback? Other than because, Trey Lance can do it. He has the mobile ability to do it. I think if you really – I think Mahomes can do it. But do they ever run Mahomes like that? No. Because they know – in one sense, they're not dumb enough to do it. But two, there's no reason to because he's so good at passing the ball, right? He's so good at making decisions as a quarterback. And that's my last point. If Shanahan's system is so QB friendly, why can't Trey Lance run it? If Shanahan just wants to tell a quarterback where to throw it, why can't Lance do that? That's my question. That paired with, is that why Shanahan doesn't trust him? Is because he simply doesn't trust him to throw the ball where he wants him to throw it. And maybe that's just a Shanahan thing. And that's just Shanahan's offense. And any other offensive coordinator would die to have Trey Lance. Maybe. But, I mean, if that were a case, I feel like a trade would happen in this next week.
I think maybe it probably has to do with maybe Lance doesn't always throw it where Shanahan wants him to throw it. So, I just sort of have this mindset that I think Shanahan just wants guys who are just going to run his offense exactly how Shanahan draws it up. And, like playing Madden. I think Shanahan wants to play real life Madden. And I think that it takes more to be a successful quarterback in the NFL. I think.
Yeah, I mean,
like if you want to be a top tier guy, you have to go above and beyond what what your coach is asking out of you. You have to know what the defense is showing you. And I think there's a reason why Shanahan's quarterbacks typically have a lot of turnovers. And I think it's probably because there are a lot of plays where Shanahan thinks thinks something's going to happen, or he's going to get a look on defense, which probably most of the time happens. But I mean, God forbid you don't go to the guy that Shanahan wants you to go to, because he's trying to set up plays, set up other plays. He will chew you out in the headset. He will absolutely chew you out, and he's ruthless, apparently.
I mean, it's entirely possible that Shanahan just has an insane ego, and it's my way or the highway and all that, and it's probably at least partially for sure true, right? My conundrum with all of this is like, if I think it's a fact that Trey Lance has the best arm on the team, why can't he earn the chance, not even just like a spot on the team, but a chance to compete with Purdy this training camp? Why can't he get trust from Shanahan to go on the field and run the play that he wants him to run? As far as, Shanahan's offense is so QB friendly, if that's so true, which I think it pretty much is, like, I think it's a lot of the time you see the play. If you watch the play, it's like hike, look left, left wide receiver cuts in, throw ball, right? And he's wide open. Like, that's what it usually is. Or hike, look at Kittle. Oh, he made a little 1-2 step and he's open, throw ball. Like, that's usually what it is. And yeah, a lot of the times, especially probably out wide, a receiver doesn't get open.
It's simpler than that, dude. I mean, the whole Jimmy offense, hike, look, Debo screen. Oh yeah, Kyle said that in the headset. Throw ball. Hike.
Right.
Oh, Ayuk, bubble screen. Oh, like throws at the line of scrimmage, right? Granted, we have seen in these preseason games, there have been wide open guys that Lance has not pulled the trigger for, but that I think will get fixed over time with reps, because he hasn't played a whole lot of football since 2019. Right. So I'm going to formally introduce the topic, because we're going to keep going on this. And we've been at this, for a long time now. But do I do the comments first, or do I get to them after? I think I'll introduce the topic first and sprinkle them in. But breaking news, I know I've had it on the screen for a little while. Sam Darnold was officially named quarterback number 2 by Kyle Shanahan, and Kyle Shanahan either lied or changed his mind overnight after saying that Sam Darnold and Trey Lance would alternate between quarterback 2 and 3. He said that yesterday to the media, and today he's got a completely different story. So I don't know when it changed, but the other big story out of this is Lance was absent from practice. And I think that's the main thing from here, because I sort of predicted Sam Darnold would be quarterback 2. I think I said that in the last episode. Like, I don't think Darnold is really I don't see him having bigger upside than Trey Lance. But if you're going to have a successful team, you want that guy who's got the more stable floor. And Darnold over his career has not proven to have a stable floor. But Darnold these past few months has at least shown he's going to do what Shanahan tells him to do. So I believe Kyle prefers Sam Darnold, and he clearly does after the decision that he made today. And do I feel like it's the wrong decision? Kinda. Like, I think everything surrounding Lance has been a wrong decision from Kyle Shanahan, like, since he got drafted and since they made the trade up to get him. Do I see the logic in starting Darnold? I mean, in keeping Darnold like as quarterback 2 over Lance? I see that. And do I think Lance will remain on this football team? I don't think so. I would love him to. I think he can eventually grow into a solid NFL quarterback. I do think the writing is on the wall that he was not at practice today. And Shanahan on KNBR said that after he brought Trey Lance into the office this morning and told him the news. And I guess he could tell by Lance's body language that he kind of took it a little hard or whatever, and so he gave him the day off to clear his mind. Yeah, right. Like, all right. I think they're clearly trying to trade Lance. Like, you don't want Trey Lance to go on the practice field and get hurt. I think this is like the Derek Carr situation last year. I think they're trying to move him, and so you don't want him out there anymore. I think his time, unfortunately, might be over in San Francisco. Although Shanahan said he would love to keep Trey, but he will explore opportunities that might be better for Trey. So, do I think it's 100% certain that Trey doesn't come back? No, I wouldn't. I mean, one thing that this Niner regime has shown, especially with the quarterback position, a guy isn't gone until he's gone. I think Lance could very well still be on the roster, this upcoming season, especially with the trade market that's out there for him. Do I think that there's a strong chance he's traded by the end of the week? I do. I think there is a strong chance. Am I pissed off about it? Hell yeah. They wasted 3 firsts and a third. And it's not Lance's fault. It's really not Lance's fault. I'm really under the firm belief that the 49ers mismanaged him. Mike, what do you think about the whole thing? Not just the mismanagement. We already kind of talked about that, but your thoughts on it.
For one thing, before I give my actual thoughts on Trey Lance, because I think on my end it's hard to have an actual thought. But was it actually Kyle Shanahan who announced that Sam Darnold is QB2, or was it NFL Network? Was it Ian Rappaport? Who was it?
Okay, so the first report that came out was Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport. They the report says the 49ers are naming Sam Darnold as their number 2 quarterback, and the team is exploring options with Trey Lance. Sources tell me, and Rap.
Sources tell me.
Okay,
so that wasn't Shanahan.
Shanahan confirmed it on KNBR.
Okay. So, for one thing, I mean, I guess it's fine. I guess it's not that big of a deal. It's just, I mean, I had told you earlier, I wonder if sources are from the Niners or if sources are Trey Lance's camp, right? Or like you mentioned in the last episode, Sam Darnold's agent is the same agent as Trey Lance's. So is this from his agent, their agent, right? I don't know. I wonder if Trey Lance is the one that is trying to get the trade to happen and not the Niners. Because it could be, right? Because
hell yeah.
I mean,
if
yeah,
I was Trey Lance, I would want the hell out of here, dude.
At this point, yeah.
They do not have, if I'm Lance, they do not have my best interests in mind. And I don't think they've had his best interests in mind since he got drafted.
Right. And like I said earlier, if I'm Trey Lance, I want to get traded now while I still have another year left on my deal after this season, so that the team that gets me gets time to integrate me, right? And maybe I get that chance and I know what I'm doing. So if I hit the field, I feel ready to do so, right? I mean, that's that. The other thing is that I saw a tweet. I think it was possibly also Pelissero or somebody, but Shanahan said in the interview with KMBR that Trey Lance is playing this Friday.
He did say that, but he didn't say he is playing. He said the plan is to play Trey. Trey didn't practice today. I think they're gonna move him. Like, I think, yeah. Oh, we were planning on it, and then we ended up trading him. Like, I think that's probably what's gonna go down, right? I mean, if the plan is to trade him, I mean, unless you want to just showcase him, but he might get hurt again. But
I would give him the first half. I'd give him the first half, and I would give the fourth string quarterback the second half.
That's not what they're doing. They're giving Darnold I guess the starters are going to play a little bit again, and then Darnold's going to go, and then Lance is going to go after Darnold.
Then
I think it's what
I would have the starters play one or two drives, probably just one. Have Darnold play maybe two drives or to the end of the first quarter, and then I would have Lance do the second quarter, maybe the third quarter, depending on how good he does in the second quarter. If he does great in the second quarter, he's done. If he is not good in the second quarter, let him play in the third quarter. But I don't know. I just I mean, we'll see. We're gonna find out in the next 2 weeks for sure. By the time the cutdowns are due, we will find out. Which actually, I'm curious what that date is. The day, I'm pretty sure it's usually the day after all of the preseason games are done in week 3 of the preseason, the final week. But I don't know for sure.
Yeah. So,
but
I mean,
the question that you asked me is, what do I think about Trey Lance?
You already shared like what you think, but you know, whatever you have in mind. I mean,
it's hard. It's hard to have an actual opinion of him because of the perfect excuses that he's had. I call them perfect excuses of not being able to play. If he had played all of last season, we would all know what to think. The problem is that we don't know what to think. And in these preseason games, like I said, yeah, he can have a great outing against the Broncos, against their third stringers. And same goes for Aiden O'Connell. You know, so like I said, I mean, there were throws that Trey Lance made in the game against the Broncos that was just like, again, his arm talent is obvious. The best word I can come up with is that this is just such a conundrum. Drafted third overall, yada, yada, yada. He's had all this time with the team, and yes, he's had injuries, and they have set him back. But I feel like even with that, Shanahan would know to a degree whether or not he can work with him. And if they trade him, it's either because let's just let him go and do what's best for Trey, right? Because like I did earlier, like stop cramming him, right? But also at the same time, it kind of says our work is done here. We can't do anything else, you know, and that's a little alarming. In the backdrop of all of this, it's entirely possible that you are completely right. Kyle Shanahan does not know how to gauge quarterbacks.
He's proven it over and over again. Like, all right, last season, Purdy was the third stringer, and they kept Garoppolo to hedge their bets on Trey. But really, Purdy would have been fine to hedge their bets on Trey. But they didn't know what they had in Purdy because they hadn't seen him in a game.
Well, I mean, they kept Garoppolo because he had the injury, right?
Garoppolo had the injury,
and they
tried to trade
contract.
him. They restructured his contract, and then they kept him. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with keeping Garoppolo last year. But, all right, what if you would have kept Garoppolo, and if you would have known, like, Purdy is making the right decisions, the right reads at practice, I mean, why was Garoppolo the first guy to come in after Lance went down? I guess, because he's proven, but you with your actions have shown you do not like Jimmy Garoppolo. You traded 3 firsts and a third to replace him. And you didn't even replace him with that guy. You replaced him with Mr. Irrelevant. So it kind of comes into the Niners panicked. At every step of the way, it seems like they panicked with the whole Lance thing. Did your AirPods also die?
No, I just thought I heard rain outside, but it's the dryer.
Okay, because one of my AirPods just died.
Yeah. I think they had a solid.
This is also true. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is also very true. The Niners do love their compensation picks. So
yeah,
that is a great.
Which maybe that's a reason you keep Trey Lance the next year and a half. You just let him walk, and hey, we'll get a 5th round pick either way. Maybe I don't know if that's how it works, but I think it depends on how many players you sign in free agency. Like next season, you probably won't get a comp pick because you signed Javon Hargrave, but you also lost a bunch of guys, so who knows? I mean, it's on the very opposite spectrum of what you just said about Shanahan proving that he can't. What would you call it? Not gauge quarterbacks, but
he can't
develop,
analyze, evaluate.
I mean, he trades for Jimmy Garoppolo, and you guys end up in the Super Bowl. Granted, I never felt like Garoppolo was like a great quarterback. I think Trey Lance is just his biggest mistake. But if you go back to Kirk Cousins, it's like the word was always that Kirk Cousins was always his guy, and that ended out working. And now he's with the Vikings, and I mean, I don't think he's the best quarterback in the world, but he throws for over 4,000 yards consistently and 30 touchdowns or around that,
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, Purdy, that's pretty solid, all things considered, but that's a 7th round pick. That's kind of a throwaway. It's just, to me, it's Lance is the biggest, what the fuck, whereas clearly Shanahan can be successful when the guy that fits is in there. But at the same time, I mean, when the Raiders signed Garoppolo, it was well, look at the team that he's coming from, right? I mean, Shanahan's had a lot of help with his defense. So I don't know. I just, all of this, point being for me, I can't formulate a full opinion because I genuinely can't tell if Shanahan is actually good or not at evaluating quarterbacks. And I genuinely can't tell if Trey Lance has any chance of being anything in this league. I just can't.
Mm-hmm.
But I can formulate little opinions here and there and then ask questions like, well, why can't Trey Lance get on the field? Is it because Shanahan's stupid? Or is it because Trey Lance, he's not stupid, but he can't figure out an NFL offense because he's that raw, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess, to sort of, I guess to finish out, I'm going to share with you a little clip from the KNBR thing, and then maybe we'll sort of wrap up our thoughts on the whole Trey Lance thing. Let me share my screen. Because we could talk literally all day about this, but let's hear from the coach.
Do you have any expectations one way or the other whether he'll be here when you guys be a member of the 49ers when you guys play the Steelers?
I'm really hoping so. I mean, this isn't a thing that we're giving up on Trey. This is more of how Brock played in his 7 games, and that was decided before the season started. And then how good Sam's looked. They both looked good. But we do have to make a decision here, and you only get so many reps at it, and we feel starting about 10 days ago, Sam really separated himself, and we got to keep it real in that way. But I feel very, very fortunate to have both of them here. I really hope when it's said and done that all 3 of these guys are here, and You never know when that's going to come up. We needed 4 guys last year. Doesn't happen much, but if we can have Trey as an option here, I would feel extremely happy about that. And I think the other quarterbacks in our room would, and I think our team would. Trey's a very liked guy, one of the better people I've been around. And I do think he's going to have a lot of success in this league. It's been a tough road for him because the times he has gotten an opportunity, he ended up getting hurt and missed that window. And now he's sitting in this position, and we'll always try to do right for Trey. If there's a better situation that his heart's in and something like that, we're going to make sure not to do something that hurts him in that way. So that's stuff that I talked to him about this morning. That's stuff I'll talk to him about tonight and continue to talk to him about. But Trey knows how I feel about him. And I hope he ends up being able to be here, and that's the best thing for him. But we got to see what is the best thing from now until then.
So upon hearing that again, I think that probably his agent stepped in and is like, I need the best thing for my guy. Because Shanahan's talking about he hopes that the 49ers are the best thing for him, right? He hopes that Trey stays and everything. And I just look at the actions. I think the agent clearly wants Trey to get out because Trey needs to go somewhere where he can play. I think Trey's clearly unhappy that he's going to be the third quarterback. And one thing that really stood out to me about what Shanahan said is that he said 10 days ago, Sam started to really separate himself. Do you know what event happened 10 days ago?
The Raider game.
It was the Raiders versus 49ers preseason game where Darnold looked fine and Lance, he improved as the game went along, but was terrible in the first quarter. And it looked bad. And I think Shanahan probably is panicking on that. And, it kind of is what it is at this point. And at the end of the day, I just want the right decision to be made. But, man, do I feel bad for Lance, dude. Darnold, I think, in practice since has gone 1 of 7. He had a practice where he went 1 of 7. So it's these guys, the whole training camp and practice really doesn't matter in terms of the competition. It's what they do in games. And I think Lance proved something in this most recent game. But maybe it's just sort of a feeling that Shanahan has kind of had for a while. And I think the actions speak louder than the words. Like I've said countless times today.
Yeah, if 10 days ago is what Shanahan thinks is when the separation began, the Raider game makes sense. Because, Trey Lance was, 2 different Raider defenders away from having 2 interceptions and no touchdowns in that game. He was really, really bad until maybe his final drive of the game. Really, really bad.
I think his first 3 drives were bad, and then he settled in after that and looked pretty good.
Yeah, my thing is
not fantastic, but he didn't look awful in his final 2 drives, so he showed improvement. Not that it could have gotten any worse from that.
Yeah, it's just I think the word for Trey Lance, and some people might not like this, is just inconsistent. That's how it felt, especially in the Raider game. Because the first 3 drives I think were 3 and outs. I could be wrong about that. First quarter, it was 1 yard of total offense. But then the second quarter, okay. I don't know when you guys got the touchdown to Dwelly off of Duke Shelley's hands.
That was in the second quarter.
Second quarter. Okay, so that play
it had to be the second quarter because in the first we only gained 1 yard.
Thank you. Okay, good point. So, I mean, point being, like, he has throws where it's like, dude, that arm talent, hell yeah, right? And oh, nice decision. There was like a 3rd and 10 where he just like made the perfect throw decision, blah blah blah, right? But then it's also like, okay, at the end of that drive, should have been picked. Granted, I mean, he had pressure in his face. It was an awkward throw, yada yada yada. The guy definitely looked like he was open, and then once he throws it, it's like he's got 2 defenders closing. And it was really a good play by Shelley, and it turns into a touchdown. But the play that's sticking out to me is I think in our breakdown of the film, we considered his worst pass of the day, which was the dropped interception by Amari Burney. I mean, he threw that thing into triple coverage, and Burney should have had possibly a pick six. And I just think I can see that being something that after the other, the touchdown play that should have been a pick, for Shanahan being like, dude, like, I couldn't put that on the field against starters, But I agree with what Shanahan said in, I hope that this is the best scenario for him. And if he is on this team, like, of course you'll be happy to have him, because like I said, any other team in the NFL should be willing to give up a 5th round pick for him, because you can't have too many backup quarterbacks. Well, you can, but you can't have too many like solid backup quarterbacks. I think I'm still saying that wrong, but basically, like, backup quarterbacks are worth it, right? They're worth having, especially a guy that can, hey, you never know, could become a starter, right? Like a Aiden O'Connell. He's worth having. Brian Hoyer, not worth having.
Yeah.
And Trey Lance is not Brian Hoyer, right? Mostly because we don't know who Trey Lance is still. The only person that has the greatest chance of knowing who he is, to me, is Kyle Shanahan. So take that however you want to take that. But I just think Trey Lance has been so inconsistent that he's definitely not a starter right now, but I don't think that he can't be, Like, I'm not like a super hard. I'm not going to be hard on Trey Lance. Like I've said, he's had all these reasons why he's not on the field and stuff. It's tough. It is so tough. My best guess, I mean, just based off of the way that Shanahan said all of that, and like, well, I hope he's on our team. It sounds like they gave him permission to seek a trade, but they haven't announced it.
I think behind the scenes, like, I think that's clearly what was implied, because he said if Trey finds an opportunity that isn't going to, mess him up, then like Shanahan said, we won't send him to an opportunity that will put him in a bad spot.
Right.
Or something along those lines. He didn't
so
say
if we trade him, we'll make sure it's good for him. We're not just going to trade him just for the highest pick. If we trade him, it's because, this is good for him, But also bear in mind the tweet from Pelissero. The ending to that tweet was,
they're exploring options.
They're exploring all options. Like, what else do you think that means other than we're probably looking for a trade? Like, why would you say, like, if the Raiders came out and said, and this is a completely different scenario, but still, if the Raiders came out and said, Aiden O'Connell has won the number 2 job for the quarterback spot in Las Vegas, they are exploring all options with Brian Hoyer, everybody would say, well, they're either going to cut him or trade him. Right?
Yeah.
What the fuck else does that mean? The only other option is he's the 3rd quarterback, which is implied.
I mean, what other options could there be? Like, what, are they going to fucking have him be like the hot dog person at Levi's? Come on. Like, you know what I mean? Got to get something out of those picks, right?
Yeah. I think what's clear to me, I mean, okay, for one thing, the media is the media. Trey Lance has been the story of this preseason. So they knew once they got that word, they had to say it, right? But I also think the fact that it came from sources somebody wants the word out. Hey, we're looking for all options here. So offer up. Somebody wants that out there. And I'm curious if that's Niners, Trey Lance, or both. I don't know.
Mhm.
But I mean, I said 2 or 3 podcasts ago, if I were them, I would keep him because of the Josh Johnson scenario in the NFC Championship. There's no fucking reason to just get rid of Trey Lance just to get rid of him. Now, if he's demanding a trade, now I see. Right? And I wouldn't blame him for doing that. So
I would keep Lance because you can't have too many quarterbacks on this 49er team that has struggled to keep quarterback healthy. I think that there is still a chance that Lance could see the field eventually at some point this season. He may get an opportunity because the quarterbacks just don't stay healthy here. And I guess I just want to wrap up with saying, do I know for sure Lance is going to get traded? No. Do I think there is a scenario where he is still on the team week 1? Yes. I don't know how quickly he could be moved if he is going to get moved, but in this situation, I understand Lance, if he wants to leave. Like, I don't think the Niners have done him any favors. So I feel bad for the kid, and I really hope that, I'm confident he's never going to see me say this, but Trey, just know it wasn't your fault. It really wasn't your fault. And, I am proud that you were a member of the 49ers, and I love the way you carried yourself. And if today is your last day as a 49er, I just want to thank you for, being a good kid, and I wish you nothing but the best in your next spot. If you stay, I hope that you eventually get that opportunity to show the gifts that you've been given and all that hard work that you've put into refining your craft. And I hope that one day you're able to prove everybody wrong. So, with that, I think we've said just about as much as we can say without, I guess sort of hammering in a nail that's already in the stud, right?